Welcome to the LawyerFair.co.uk daily podcast. LawyerFair helps businesses find the right lawyer at the fairest price. But on this podcast, we just chew the fat with some great guests.
We have another LawyerFair daily podcast on our hands. It's Andrew Weaver, CEO, LawyerFair.co.uk, and fresh from a stint on the beaches of Cyprus, Tony Gimple. Welcome.
Hi Andrew, thank you for the introduction.
Not at all. Now, I noticed from your website that you're known for your creative and original free thinking. so this conversation could go anywhere.
Indeed.
Despite the fact we're going to have a little focus around shareholder agreements, which is a subject that is of massive importance. If it isn't, it should be to any business and any business owner. And essentially, it's an instrument for so many things. But you wanted to focus on one particular area, Tony.
Yeah, I did. Look, most people end up in business by chance rather than design. Yeah, they have a good idea, they get on with it, they build a business, and if they're halfway lucky with a following wind, it actually gets to be worth something at some point in time. However, what every business owner tends to forget, and they're never told by their lawyers or accountants, is that what would happen if, say, a shareholder died, retired, or incapacitated, disqualified, or could otherwise not carry out their duties.
And what should?
What should? Okay. Well, you got to have the means in place with which to cater for these events, and you do that via something called a shareholders agreement, or if you are in a partnership, in partnership agreements. Mm-hmm. And the things to look out for is, can a shareholder freely transfer their shares to their spouse, children, associated company, family, trust, etc. And if they can, will the new owner want to be involved in the business, or will you want them to be? Classic example, let's say you and I are in business, 50-50 shareholders, I fall off my perch, my wife inherits my shares, she knows jack shit about my business, you don't even like her. Okay, what are you going to do?
Yep.
Okay. Another thing to be aware of, is, can an existing shareholder sell or transfer their shares to an outsider without first offering them to the other shareholders? Something known as preemption rights. Or would you be happy if those shares went to a competitor? So then my wife decides to sell them to your biggest competitor. How are you going to feel about that? Yeah. Or what happens? And if one of us, dies, it's going to happen, goes bankrupt, or just loses the plot totally. Yeah. And then how are you going to value it? Is it by a formula established in advance, value assessed by auditors, or a default agreement, or some other? We'll stick our finger in the air and work out what it's worth at the time.
So these agreements. I mean, let me go back to the basics then, Tony. Do you find that many companies don't have shareholders agreements? I mean, it strikes me as a kind of basic level of hygiene that you should have one in place. But do you come across businesses that don't?
Most.
No, really.
Seriously. Yeah. Something like 90% of the businesses I see do not have shareholders agreements. 95% of the businesses I see don't have powers of attorney. So, if a signing director is physically or mentally incapable, what's the business going to do? And I'll tell you why this comes about. It's because most lawyers and most accountants assume their clients are in a position to give them a meaningful instruction. They're not. Their client may know an awful lot about making widgets, but hasn't got a clue of what it really means to be in business. And so people don't ask. They assume that if I need to know, my accountant or solicitor will tell me. The solicitor assumes that, well, if he hasn't asked me, he doesn't need to know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I find those stats astonishing. I mean, I'm working in the startup world at the moment, and often you get companies that don't kind of formalise an agreement, particularly if it's a bunch of mates that have started a
Yeah,
company, or
yeah.
they think, oh well, he's my mate now, I've been my mate forever. And of course, when money becomes involved, in particular, then suddenly, funnily, how friendships get fraught.
Yes.
But I'm very surprised, genuinely surprised, with the stats you've mentioned, and so it strikes me that first and fundamentally, you should have some form of agreement in place.
Yes.
And then clearly, you need to start looking at some of these issues that you've mentioned. And of course, like most contracts, it's all about worst case scenario, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And Gimple's first law, always look at the worst first.
Yeah.
If you choose to ignore it after you've looked at it, okay, you've chosen to ignore it, but that's your choice.
No, absolutely. And so in terms of, so if a business owner is listening to this now and thinks, crikey, I need to get this sorted, there's obviously some of the businesses, particularly smaller ones, start to fret about the cost.
Yep.
Now, my view about costs and businesses, if you're in business without a shareholder agreement, you're a dunce, frankly. You really need to get this sorted. So it should be something that you're prepared to pay a little bit of cash on.
Yep.
It's kind of so fundamental that you need to allocate some cash, and you need to get it drafted properly. Because again, a weak shareholders agreement may actually be worse than having one at all. And my interest actually, Tony, comes from kind of M&A background and stuff, and a badly drafted agreement, for example, on the withdrawal of one of the shareholders. One of the shareholders wants to leave, and you've got to find out a value. If it's been badly drafted in the valuation formula, you could be in a whole bowl of wrong.
Yep.
And I mean, again, your experience of these things is that it's ripe for conflict if poorly drafted.
Yes, and okay, let's put that in perspective. The first thing to do is understand that which the client is trying to achieve. And so it's pinning down in the following situations, death, disability, retirement, incapacity, disqualification, etc. What is best for the business? Mm-hmm. Okay. Once you've got that, you start to reverse engineer. And there's a big part of it is getting the protagonists together in a darkened room with a bottle of scotch and banging their heads together. Get them to see sense. Once you've got that, then you can now start to draft it. Now, I don't know, let's take a typical shareholders agreement. Is 100 clauses, whatever. 90 of those are going to be the same, almost regardless. The real skill is getting which 10 from an infinite library and in what order to achieve what goal. There's a real danger that if the person drafting the agreement is not themselves in business or has not been an entrepreneur, you can end up with a document that is too legal and not practical enough to cover off what's really happening within the business. You also get a danger. If you make these things too damn complex, nobody understands them, they fall into disquietude, and they're never agreed because they're just too complex.
Fit for purpose, I think is the phrase.
Fit for purpose, and as Thor Heyerdahl said, the guy who built Kon-Tiki, progress is man's ability to complicate simplicity.
Yes, I think there's a few lawyers have subscribed to that, haven't they? And so, in terms, how does a business owner look at this and say, well, look, how do they, not knowing all of these things, and not to some extent, there's an imbalance of power between the business owner and the professional advisor.
Yes.
Put that in brackets. So how do they cut through the crap? How do they get that lawyer to deal with it on a commercial basis?
Thank you for asking.
We'll record another podcast for that one.
It's random. Look, there are a few people out there like me who've had a foot in both camps. You have to look for somebody who runs their law firm as a business. Who treats the law just as another business but applies all the other measures any other commercial business would. If you can find one of those and they've got a good commercial department, chances are they'll assume you don't know what you don't know. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to find someone. However, they are out there.
Well, I tell you the easiest solution, and I think this is the first time, this is our 69th podcast, but I think this is almost the first time where I've done a direct plug. But of course, the obvious route is to go via LawyerFair, where we match you with the right lawyers and create the fit that's required for your business. But anyway, that's the end of the plug. LawyerFair.co.uk, brilliant website. Listen, Tony.
I thought you said that was the end of the plug.
Once I got on a roll, I just couldn't stop myself, you know. But listen, that's brilliant. I'm really appreciative of your time on that, and it is a shareholders agreement is one of those fundamental documents. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you can kind of go lightweight on some of the other documents that people might recommend a business and a startup or business at any stage, frankly, takes on board. But the shareholders agreement is so fundamental, and it really bites you on the bottom when something goes wrong, or you want to sell the business, or a shareholder wants to depart. It's really the crucial document, isn't it?
Absolutely. In fact, there are only two crucial documents. One is having good terms of business.
Yep.
And secondly, having a good shareholder agreement.
Yep, agreed. Well, this has been a quality podcast, Tony. Not that the other 68 weren't, but this has been a quality one. And also, frankly, our line is fantastic. So we sometimes have to battle with fairly indifferent connections on some of these recordings. So I really appreciate you joining us. If anybody wants to get hold of you, Tony, best route for that?
Yeah, they can contact me directly on 07974 099221. Info at planned-succession.com, and they can visit the website at the same place.
Tony, you've been a star. Are you still nursing a little sunburn?
No sunburn, but I'm trying to preserve the even suntan on my back and on my legs, as the lyric says.
Good for you, Tony. Thanks again.
Take care, man. Speak soon. Bye bye.
That was the LawyerFair Daily Podcast. There will be more again tomorrow. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks for listening to the LawyerFair.co.uk Daily Podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, why not subscribe and download each episode via iTunes, or visit us on the LawyerFair.co.uk website.